I'm Matt Florell. Keeping with Astricon tradition, they misspelled my name out on the placard out front. They've done that, I believe, the last 3 years, put 2 R's in my last name. But that's how you spell it properly. I'm the president and creator of ViciDial. I started that project back in 2003. Obviously, it's a dialer, outbound contact center solution. It also does inbound, blended, and we're adding email functionality. It's been in development for the last 6 months. So it's a rather complex process to add, but we're trying to do it right, and there are a lot of bugs along the way. But over the years, answering machine detection has been a pretty strong client request, client requirement, or at least they thought it was sometimes. Most of them just say, oh, we just want the answering machines to go away. And some of them say, well, we just want to leave messages on answering machines. But they all want 100% detection with 0 delay, which is impossible. But we've gotten a lot better in the last several years, and we're going to go over basically the history and what product offerings are out there. And it's gotten a lot more crowded in that field, which is a good thing in the last, just in the last year. So first, we'll go over what call progress analysis is. Basically, within Asterisk, there is no call progress analysis. You've got the dial command, and then you've got an answer, and whatever happens between those two, as far as Asterisk is concerned, it's either a hang up or a cancel. And sometimes you get a SIP code back or a PRI code back, but if you have anything like SIT tones, which are special information tones or things like that, Asterisk can make no sense of those at all. Doesn't try, doesn't give you any hooks to even try. There are some techniques you can go about to record your pre-answer time on phone calls using local channels, but even that won't really help you to distinguish what is actually going on. So what call progress analysis does is it answers, or before the answer, it detects the pre-answer events or tones or voice or delays or amplitude, frequencies. There are all sorts of different methodologies, but it's basically taking the pre-answer audio, analyzing it to figure out what's going on with that phone call. It can also help with disconnects and carrier congestion, again, depending upon what kind of audio you're getting from the carrier. This is something went back and forth with Sangoma several years ago. Is it CPA or CPD? Well, within their own documentation, in some places they called it CPD for call progress detection, and in some places they called it CPA for call progress analysis. CPA seems to be the industry standard term used now, but you will still see, including inside of ViciDial, several references to CPD. It's the same thing. Answering machine detection is a little simpler than CPA because it happens after the answer is received from the carrier. And it's to detect a human or an answering machine, or in some cases a business answer or a human answer. I know one offering that offers those distinctions, and you can set up different patterns for what is considered a human answer or an answering machine. After the answer signal is the important part, because within Asterisk, it's, like I said, very difficult to find out what's going on before the answer signal. Also, post-answer detection includes fax machine detection, which we'll go over in a minute. Why use CPA and AMD in a call center? More efficient use of agent time. I know Sangoma has done some case studies on this in plugging their own product, talking about a 20% increase in efficiency. That means your agents spend 20% more talk time, not just time on the phone, but actual talk time with customers. And that can lead to making more money or having better support or anything like that. At this time, I should mention, I am putting a PDF of this up on ViciDial.org tonight, so if you want a full copy of this, it will be available then, and I know they're recording it, so it'll be available on the Astricon website at some point in the future. Another reason that you would want to use CPA or AMD is to leave fully recorded messages on a customer answering machine. One of the difficulties in doing something like a broadcast or just leaving a message instead of sending an answering machine to an agent is that you don't know when that beep is. You know, when's the beep on the answering machine, or even if it's an answering machine, when you should start playing your pre-recorded message to have it left. Having answering machine detection helps greatly with that. Cleaning calling lists of disconnected and changed phone numbers. We actually had a client that had us set up a test system for Sangoma CPD. They ran all their customer lists through it in a month, and then they said, thank you very much, we don't need it. And they effectively just used it to clean up their lists. They removed about 20% disconnected, changed numbers. Again, you can't analyze sit tones with Asterisk, so basically they got what they wanted out of it, and then they didn't feel like they needed to buy it. So that was about a year and a half ago, and they haven't asked about it since. Avoiding fax machines. I don't know if you have agents that when they get fax machines in their ear, sometimes it can be very, very loud. I know that fax machine recognition has been added to more recent versions of Asterisk, but being able to filter out fax machines, even though they're rare, will help with agent morale. Lower dropped call rates is another plus of CPA and AMD, most importantly because of the efficiency, the increase in efficiency. You get lower drop call rates, your predictive engine can run more efficiently, it can run better, it does in ViciDial at least, and when you're able to detect those answering machines, it's not taking agent time away from the regular calls to have them hear the first few seconds and then hang up and disposition it as an answering machine. Inside of Asterisk, there are some built-in or free add-on options that have been offered over time. The first of these was back in 2005, a company called Ahiva that makes or made their own predictive dialer contact center solution and was one of the first to offer an Asterisk-based solution, although their code is proprietary. It is based on Asterisk. At AstriCon Europe, they released for free App AMD, which is a plug-in module that was created to do answering machine detection within the framework of Asterisk. Now, of course, it is only post-answer, doesn't do CPA at all, and we've never been able to get more than 80% accuracy out of it, and that's usually at about a 3 seconds or higher analysis time. We have clients that do use it, usually because of the high false positives. You know, it's up to 20% false positives of humans that are detected as answering machines. It's not a good idea to use it. That's a pretty high false positive rate, but we do support it in our ViciDial software. And it was an important step at the time, back in 2005, to at least give the option of answering machine detection. And back in Asterisk 1.4, it was actually added as a standard module that's now included with all Asterisk versions. Also around that time, Newman Telecom, which seems to have fallen off the face of the earth and now displays a generic Chinese web page, they released several detection modules, line detect, background detect, machine detect, all sorts of detection modules that basically would allow you to do some level of answering machine detection, CPA, if you could loop the call back through the system so you could hear dialing, which is pretty complex. But they were based upon the Asterisk 1.2 framework, and they're not really supported in 1.4, although there are instructions you can find online to build them on 1.4. I remember testing them probably 8 years ago and had limited success. We never integrated them into ViciDial in any way, but there are a lot of people out there that use things like the line detect or the fax detect, because before 1.6.2, which I mentioned right here, fax detection was not built into Asterisk. So that was one of the modules that gave you some additional options to do fax detection on incoming calls. And now to the commercial add-ons, and there are 3 now. The first one, Sangoma Netborder Call Analyzer, was released, I believe, in 2007 under the name and the company of Parazip, which is a company out of Montreal, Canada. And they were acquired by Sangoma, and they made an effort to make it Asterisk compatible at the end of 2008. We released a patch in 2009 and did a lot of testing and installed our first commercial installation of Sangoma CPD or CPA back in 2009. And that's something that we've integrated with. We've integrated statistics and analysis, and the whole call path can be configured rather simply now with ViciDial to work with the Sangoma Call Analyzer to this day. It does work as a SIP proxy, so you basically have to have the calls going through the CPD box. It's a separate standalone machine. There are some options. We did test it being on the same machine, but that led to higher loads, and it was just easier for failover and for load balancing to use a separate machine for the CPA server itself. A couple of years later, Dialogic, the Diastar project, they released their perfect call answering machine detection compatibility with Diastar, which is an open source project in its own right. And basically using Chan Woomera, which is something they help sponsor, you can have the calls pass through Diastar and use the perfect call analysis algorithm, which is mostly tone and frequency based. And we're going to go over each of these in detail. But we have tested it. We didn't implement it because it wasn't really something they were pushing hard. They have cut their prices significantly since the first time we had talked to them. But Sangoma's Netborder Call Analyzer was working very well for us, better than the testing of the Dialogic had been going at the time. So we really didn't put too much effort into converting to it. Lumenvox came out with a call progress analysis system just this year. They had released an AMD module about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, an answering machine detection only. But they have added more functionality to it to be able to do call progress analysis. And it's still very new, but it operates as an add-on to their existing speech platform. We'll go over that more in a minute. Here's more on the call analyzer. It operates as a SIP proxy server, as I mentioned. You do have to do some special configuration in Asterisk to get the calls to go through it. You do have to set it up as a proxy. And it operates on both Windows and Linux. And when we were first using this, it was only offered as a Windows application. And we experienced many firewall issues within Windows, including Windows deciding it didn't like the fact that we disabled portions of the firewall, so it just decided to re-enable them. And that caused some problems, but the Linux version, I'm told, is much better. So that's what I would recommend you go with. It has an optimal limit at about 200 channels per proxy server. Now that's on the newer 2.0 version of their product. On the 1.0 version, which had less features and slightly less accuracy, it had a capacity of 400 channels. So this was a significant decrease, but the quality and the speed of the analysis did go up over the course of changing how the analysis worked. And it does use, just to skip down to the bottom, it does use a speech recognition model or an artificial intelligence heuristics, they like to say. But basically they feed calls into the algorithm, and it learns what each of these calls is and what the characteristics of those calls are. And they may feed 19,000 calls in from a specific pre-answer and answering machine calls from a specific country before they release the mappings for that country. At least that's how it was explained to me. So it's not strictly based upon a tone frequency match type of analysis. It does use a lot of elements from speech recognition. The configurable parameters are set at startup time. You cannot override them on a per call basis. So that's one of the limitations of this. There is no easy licenses and use interface. There's nothing that you can easily tell, oh, I have 199 channels use, I shouldn't place 10 more phone calls. So that's something you do need to monitor on your own through the connecting servers. One upside is the licenses are only in use while the analysis is happening at the beginning of the call. So even though this is a proxy server and the calls are passing through, as soon as it sends that result for the call of whether it's a human, voice is what it comes up as, or a machine, or a sit tone, even if the call keeps going, the license is released to be used. So you don't need to have a one-to-one relationship of lines to licenses with this product. Also, as I was just informed last night, Sangoma is rebranding this or putting together a package and calling it AMD for Asterisk. And they're just putting out a press release for that today to kind of make it something easier to relate to, because Sangoma Netborder Call Analyzer doesn't necessarily lend itself to telling you what it does or how it works with Asterisk. So. Next is the Dialogic Diastar Perfect Call option offering. As I said, it operates through the Chan Woomera optional channel module to Asterisk. It has a peak capacity of 400 channels per server on what they call a high-end server, which would be a dual quad-core machine. The configurable parameters are only set at startup time, just like Sangoma. But they do have a licenses and use interface that you could easily do through the command line and hook it into various other ways of seeing what licenses are in use. And the licenses are in use for the duration of the call, because you basically have to tie into SIP licenses and additional CPA licenses. So even though the licenses aren't as expensive as Sangoma's licenses, they are on for the duration of the call. So if you have a half-hour phone call, that's tying up a license for half an hour. But because the licenses are significantly cheaper, there's not too much difference in overall cost from this solution to the Sangoma solution. On to Lumenvox. This slide I just finished this morning. I had a conference call with them last night. I'd been trying to squeeze details out of them for 2 weeks. And luckily I was able to get a lot of details, and actually some of the details changed from day to day as various employees there found out about their brand new offering and things they didn't themselves know about it until I started asking questions. But it is, like I said, brand new. They just released their website on this product very recently. They do have some price sheets out there here at the, just like Sangoma, they're here at the expo hall. So you can see what they have for the details on it and how it's offered. And I know they have pricing available as well. They have confirmed that they have at least a peak capacity of 500 channels on a dual quad-core system. They said the system was only loaded to about 61%, and it was also running speech analysis at the time. So in theory, this could go far above 500 channels. The configurable parameters for a call for the analysis, they have defaults, but you can override them on a per call basis, which is something that the Dialogic and the Sangoma platforms don't allow you to do. Licenses in use, a little more difficult than Dialogic. They have a Windows-only GUI that can show you that, or they have C++ API libraries you can tie into, but nothing else. So that's something they are planning on working on. One of the things that changed a couple of times while I was talking to them was their license use. If you're only using CPA for their product offering, not speech analysis or anything else, the licenses are only in use during the analysis period. But since the Lumenvox CPA is essentially a full Lumenvox software suite, you do have the ability to use their speech recognition and the tie-in to the res speech module, speech background, and the other speech applications that have been built into Asterisk for years now. You don't need to use any kind of patching of Asterisk with the Lumenvox like you do with Sangoma or Dialogic. But the one limitation, and this is really because it's not a mature product yet, they've only done post-answer testing with Asterisk. Because pre-answer is so difficult to get the audio stream from inside of Asterisk, they haven't tested it, just haven't done it. Since this started out as a answering machine detection only software, that kind of makes sense. But they're working on it. So I'm encouraged by where they're heading as a project and the feature set they already have, even being a brand new offering. As for pricing, everything is priced per channel. So you have to pay for all the channels of analysis that are going on. Sangoma and Lumenvox only during the analysis time. Dialogic is licensed per concurrent channel. The Sangoma licenses are more expensive, but you need less of them because of how their license works. Lumenvox is the lowest list price, but as I mentioned, it's also very new. They haven't tested it in as many applications. You know, we've sold thousands of channel licenses for Sangoma CPD. We know it works. The largest one is 2,000 channels, and it's running on a system. Well, I've got a very crude graphic drawing as my last slide, and I'll go over the installation of how that is set up. But that's been running for over a year. So we've got a lot of time and several large installed clients that are using Sangoma CPA. So we know it works, and we know longevity is good with it. So that remains to be seen from Lumenvox. You know, there are a lot of companies that have been using Lumenvox speech recognition for years, so they have a good track record, but it's something that is not proven in this specific market yet. Lumenvox and Sangoma also offer per month licensing options. So you can just buy the number of channels you need per month, and then say you're testing it, you can figure out if you like it instead of having to buy the perpetual licenses, which are about 10 times the cost. As for integration with Asterisk, we usually recommend, as we've done with the Sangoma software, installing it on a separate proxy server. This allows you the ability to do failover, to do load balancing, to have multiple servers feed into a single CPA. That way you're not limited to a single box. Plus, if you have any kind of hardware failures on your Asterisk server, it means that you won't have to go out and fix your licensing, because licensing is tied to MAC address, and if your machine dies after hours and you need a replacement license, you're kind of SOL. Up a creek without a paddle. And we have actually had that happen to one client. Their CPA server, which unwisely they chose to put on a used Dell with 5-year-old hard drives, because it's not going to use the hard drives. Well, the hard drives failed, and they tried to install it on a new machine and discovered that the licenses are tied to the MAC address, and they weren't able to use CPA for 2 days before they figured out to call us at the end of business on one day, and we were able to contact Sangoma the next morning and get them a replacement license. The way that it works with Asterisk is your software will parse the Asterisk Manager interface events. That's how it works with Sangoma and Dialogic, where we create, and that's part of the patching of Asterisk that happens is that we read either the Chan Woomera events that come through on the channels, or in the case of Sangoma, we read the SIP events because they send SIP messages with updates as to what's going on with the channel. Because if you've ever done a SIP debug or a SIP intense debug on Asterisk, you just see junk flying by the screen. Well, with Sangoma, they add in a few custom messages like CPD result. And then that shows you one of, I think it's 12 predefined results for what it thinks that phone call is. And then you have to take that out. In ViciDial, we have a manager listener that processes those events and then inserts the responses into a database. But there are a lot of other ways of handling those events as well. That's about it. From the Lumenvox point of view, everything kind of exists within Asterisk because it's tied into Asterisk, so you can use channel variables and other things similar to that to pass along what's going on with the CPA. Tips for CPA use. The longer the analysis time, the better chance of a result instead of a hang-up. You have to give CPA time to work. You shouldn't use this as just a generic timeout. If you set it to 20 seconds so that you don't get that many answering machines, you just won't get that many calls, period. And they'll all just come back as cancels or, what is it? Is it congestions, usually congestions inside of Asterisk. For messaging campaigns where you're attempting to leave a message on the answering machine, you want to put at least 100 seconds in. Another thing you need to account for, some carriers are definitely better than others, post-dial delay, which is especially relevant in the time that we're in now before an election, because you've got every company out there, including a lot of our clients, placing millions of phone calls per week, trying to convince you to vote for red or blue, usually. And that puts a lot of stress on a lot of different carriers, usually the cheaper ones. We've seen instances of post-dial delay up to 30 seconds. And what that means is you place the phone call out, nothing, dead air. 30 seconds later, ring, first ring. That's the routing engine of your carrier trying to figure out where to send the call and taking a really long time to do it. In the meantime, Asterisk and your CPA is thinking, this is just dead air. If it gets really bad, if it is up to 30 seconds, it will just report every call as basically unknown or disconnected, just because you shouldn't be hearing 30 seconds of silence after you've placed a dial. So that's something that can usually be rectified by changing carriers, or if you have a carrier that's actually willing to admit they have a problem, working with them to try to figure out why they have a problem. Monitoring your channel usage is very important. Running over your concurrent limit will mean overage calls aren't going out. They'll just come back as channel unavailable or congestion with 0 seconds because you've hit your licensing limit. Or in some cases, it will go out without any CPA ability, and you won't get any kind of response back because it went out as a non-CPA call. Monitoring your server CPU load is very important. That's something from the CPA point of view as well as Asterisk. If your load is high, everything slows down. So that means you won't get your call to your agent as fast as you can. You won't have the analysis coming back as fast as it should be. We have clients all the time that try to overload their systems thinking, well, it hasn't crashed yet, so I could add another 100 channels. Why not? And that's one of the downsides of having an open, non-license restricted system like Asterisk, is that there's nothing to stop you from doing something stupid like trying to pass 5,000 calls through with media. It just doesn't work. But people don't generally know that. They just think, I'll just put a bigger number in here, and as long as it doesn't crash, we'll be good. But that can actually decrease your overall connection percentage. So that's something you need to watch out for. Specifically for AMD use, there are also some tips. The longer analysis time, the better the accuracy, but the longer the analysis time, the more likely the customer will hang up. or the person you're calling. So there are configurations in all of these engines where you can specify the amount of analysis time that you give it. And there are different accuracy levels at those. There was a study and a paper that was actually done by somebody from a company called Stratasoft that goes over all of the mathematical reasoning behind this and how lower accuracy and faster time affect each other, and going over the various reasons of why you'd want to set it at one time or another. But that's something you kind of have to decide for yourself, the balance you want to have on your system. For example, the email I just got today about Sangoma mentions that they have, I think it was 95%, up to 95% accuracy at 1/3 of a second of analysis time, and up to 98% accuracy at 2 seconds of analysis time. I haven't seen the actual data to back that up, but that kind of accuracy level makes sense based upon what I've seen in production. Loud background noise on the customer end will cause problems for all AMD engines. We've had complaints from clients. It's usually less than 2% of calls made to the general public where they're, say, at a bar and they answer the phone and it's just as loud with them talking as it is with them not talking. And the system will either think that's a machine or just not go on. It depends on the scenario, but that's something that we have experienced and we've noticed in situations like that. So that's something to think about. To leave an answering machine message at the right time, you can use Asterisk Wait for Silence. It's a very low utilization app that just waits for quiet on the line for X number of seconds, X number of times, and then it will die, and then you can lead on to a playback or something like that. Or the apps, Sangoma, Dialogic, Lumenvox all have built-in options to wait for the beep, basically. And then they won't return until, or they'll return a result at the beep time and exit so that you don't have to do anything like wait for silence. This is just an example because I wanted to put some kind of asterisk conf file output in this presentation. This is an example of AMD Use. This is very close to what we put on our client systems. Playing a background of some kind of file. In ViciDial, we have a file called sip-silence, which is, I think, 40 milliseconds of silence that helps to resolve local channel resolution issues. And we use it in a lot of places where we need to force some kind of media. What you'll notice, there are a bunch of pipe delimited options in here. It's mostly in milliseconds and number of attempts, but you can go to the AMD, the sample AMD.conf file, or the voip-info.org, which gives you more details on the breakdown of what the settings are for the built-in AMD. Again, we don't have many clients that use it. We don't recommend that clients use it because of its high false positive rate. And long amount of time for analysis, but there it is if you want to look at it. And then it spits out an AMD status variable. That's changed from 1.2 to 1.4. What the variables are, which kind of threw us for a loop at first, but then you can basically send it to a different destination depending on if it's a human or if it's a machine. So this is just an example of the basic free included with Asterisk AMD configuration. And here's my call flow example. I said it was rough. Basically, in the pink, you see all our lovely ViciDial servers. In the yellow, you see, in this case, Sangoma CPD servers. And then you see gateway servers. This is a client that has 3 DS3s worth of T1 lines, basically. And the ViciDial servers can either go directly to the gateway servers or they can pass through the CPD servers, depending on their dial plan. So this is an example of an installation that we've had up and running for over a year. They place anywhere from 400,000 to 800,000 calls a day through this system, and they're planning on expanding it. So it's worked very well for them, and they're very happy so far with how it's working. So. And that's my last slide. Any questions? Way in the back.
We do have a microphone here, so we'll run that around.
So my question is, when you're trying to determine whether or not you're getting the statistics on the answer machine, whether or not you're getting the false positives, is there something that you do to get those stats?
You can record the audio, and that's usually done on the proxy server, but actually analyzing it afterward is very time-consuming.
Exactly.
As you can imagine.
Right.
And Sangoma itself does have some debug that you can enable, which really eats up the hard drive fast, but that's another way that you can have the analysis data available on the back end. But yeah, recording, and that's something we did early on. And yes, it is very mind-numbing just to listen to, ringing and beeping and tritones for hours on end.
Right.
But yeah, that's how that's generally done.
Right. Thank you.
Other questions?
Yes. So when you're doing all these detection, call progress analysis, what kind of performance hit does it take? Do you have any statistics?
Performance in terms of
CPU
usage?
Yeah.
Generally, since we have it on a separate machine, we don't have to worry about it interfering with Asterisk, but it's pretty high on the CPU utilization, very high on the packet throughput, especially if you have 400 calls, 400 SIP calls with media going through a single machine. That's a lot of packet throughput. And we've had, I know we had an issue with one machine where the Ethernet card actually was a rather cheap one, and it was having issues with the amount of load we were pushing on it. So that's something to consider. We never even thought of that, but there are cheap Ethernet cards out there, and you can have problems if you try to put more through them than they're capable of handling. But in general, normal performance monitoring, like what's it called? Can't remember, HTOP or TOP, can tell you what's going on in your system in terms of memory utilization and CPU utilization and things like that, idle percent. And that can give you a good idea of what kind of performance it takes. And we've noticed also the performance is different for calling different kinds of lists on different kinds of campaigns. And if you have the analysis time set really low, that can lead to a much higher load on your system. So that's another, these are all things that you'll hear and things that I heard when you ask these companies what the capacity is. They're very reluctant to tell you, just like we are for ViciDial, because you have a 100-seat agent system that's manual dialing, and it uses hardly any load compared to a 100-seat agent system that's dialing 26 lines per agent and has a 3% answer rate. It's apples and oranges. So the capacities are very, very different depending upon what you're trying to do through it. Any other? I think there was Lorenzo had a question.
Basically, I was wondering, when you are using a detection proxy, how do you interface it to Asterisk? I mean, you send a call to the proxy, then the proxy detects a case or another. What happens?
It's pure SIP messaging. It just sends it back with the call ID, basically. And we wrote a patch for Asterisk for Sangoma that takes that SIP message and turns it into a manager API output. So then you're able to take the manager API output. We have a script that filters that, and it looks for that, and it identifies one of the 12 predefined results, and then it sticks that, in our case, sticks that into a database, and that's analyzed once the call answer comes through, and we know what to do with it. Any other questions?
Oh, one up here. Hold on. Thank you. Do you know if there is a difference of performance or reliability when you use these tools on SIP lines or SIP trunks, and when you use it in T1s, E1s? Does it behave the same?
We are using it on both SIP and T1. There isn't really too much difference as long as you're sending ULAW. If you're using something like G729, there can be quality differences. If you have packet loss, or we have some clients that go through carriers that are very cheap, and packet loss is standard coming from the carrier, that can affect the accuracy as well. So in general, this large install is all through T1s, and we've got another large install that is all through SIP. And the rates are very similar. We do very similar calling on the two different clusters. And there really doesn't seem to be too much difference that we've noticed in the rates, the detection rates or the speed. But if you use, it's a lot easier to find a bad SIP carrier than it is to find a bad T1 carrier. So that's something to consider. With SIP, you have to deal with the internet. With a T1, you've got a point-to-point going to the carrier. So overall, and that's one of the reasons this client only uses T1 DS3s. They also signed like 5-year contracts, so they're stuck. But with SIP, as long as you have a good carrier, we've had a very good experience with that ourselves.
Here, and then we'll come back up here.
For fax detection, are you relying purely on the fax detection integrated into Asterisk, or?
With when we don't use Sangoma CPD, we do. But when we're using CPD, its fax detection is very, very good, very accurate. We currently don't do any redirection of faxes because we don't have any clients that have requested that. But you can, and built into our ViciDial software, we can do something like that. We just haven't ever had a client that wanted to. I guess because of the broadcast junk fax regulations, you can get pretty hard with fines. So, but yeah, the fax detection is very good. I've heard it's also very good on, well, all the offerings for this, because fax is very universal. The tones sent out for faxing is a universal set standard, unlike voice, unlike answering machines. So it's something, 99.9%, as long as you have a good line, you're going to get a match for fax detection.
Is early media supported in any of these solutions?
It's supported in all the solutions. We've tested it, and it works with the Sangoma and the Dialogic solution. Lumenvox, their product on other platforms, like on an Avaya platform, it ties into early media. They haven't gotten that working or tested with Asterisk currently, because Asterisk early media is difficult to get. So that's, but yeah, early media is how sit tones are detected and everything like that.
So Sangoma would detect them?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? All right, let's give Matt a big round of applause.